All right, we're halfway there. This is day 15 of the 30-day Bible reading plan. So halfway, right in the middle, and we come to one of the most important texts in all of Scripture. It's a text that the New Testament draws on again and again and again, several times quoting it at length, and then many other times, alluding to it. And that's what is known as the fourth servant song in Isaiah. So Isaiah has these things called servant songs, which speak about the Lord's anointed one who will come to execute the work of the Lord by redeeming creation. He'll be the Davidic king who will be victorious and renew creation. This is the fourth one. It's Isaiah 52, verse 13 through 53, verse 12. Now, on the reading plan, I actually had this wrong. I had you starting at 52:12. Doesn't make a great deal of difference. You just read one more verse. But we're going to start in verse 13. Behold, my servant, so this is the Lord's servant, he shall act wisely. He shall be high and lifted up and shall be exalted. So this speaks of his kingly status. He's going to be the king over all. He's going to be the one that the nations come to. Remember that from Isaiah 11. And in fact, there's a direct connection to Isaiah 11 as we go along a little further here. But his appearing will not meet what would typically be expected of kings. He won't be what you would expect out of a ruler. He'll be something different. As many were astonished at you, his appearance was so marred beyond human semblance, and his form beyond that of the children of mankind. So there's something unappealing about him in this language of Isaiah. So shall he sprinkle many nations. This sprinkling has to do with redemption, cleansing. It's used in both sprinkling blood on the altar, sprinkling clean water for purification. And notice this is for the nations. Kings shall shut their mouths because of him. For that which has not been told them, they see. So the reason they're silenced is because a new revelation, what we would call an apocalypse, which literally means an unveiling. Let's see if I can spell it right. An apocalypse, an unveiling, or a revealing. So that which has not been told them, they now see. And that which they have not heard, they now understand. So it's all becoming clear who he is. Verse 16, chapter 53. Who has believed what he has heard from us? And to whom has the arm of the Lord been, and here's that word, revealed, or uncovered, that apocalypse language. For he grew up before him like a young plant and like a root. Remember Isaiah 11:10. There will be a root and all the nations will come. There'll be a shoot. Same word here. And like a root out of dry ground. He had no form or majesty that we should look at him. So it's not the expectations. It's kind of like what Paul says in 1 Corinthians 1, that God is confounding the wisdom of the wise. It's what Paul also says there when he says that this is a stumbling block to Jews, this Jesus, and he is a foolishness to the Greeks. And the reason being, it's not what you would expect, and no beauty that we should desire him. He was despised and rejected by men, a man of sorrows, acquainted with grief, and as one from whom men hide their faces. He was despised, and we esteemed him not. Now that, of course, all goes back to the fact that the Lord is esteeming him. Remember the beginning verse, he will be lifted up and exalted. He'll be the king. But we esteemed him not. We missed it. As John says, he came to his own, and they did not recognize him as he is. Surely, all right, so now we see his vicarious suffering on our behalf. Surely he has borne our griefs and carried our sorrows. Yet, the way we interpreted it was we saw him stricken, smitten by God, and afflicted. But the reality of the situation is this. He was pierced for our transgressions. He was crushed for our iniquities. Upon him was the chastisement that brought us peace. So there is this substitutionary atonement that is happening here. I can never spell these words when I need to. Substitutionary, they always look so funny. Substitutionary atonement happening on our behalf. He who knew no sin became sin that we might become the righteousness of God. That's the idea. That's from 2 Corinthians 5:21. All right. And with his wounds we are healed. And here's why we need it, right? His wounds we are healed. Here's why we need it. All we like sheep have gone astray. We have turned away, everyone to his own way. But the Lord has laid on him the iniquity of us all. So Jesus is the one we're going to learn that this is about, and on him the iniquity is laid. On him all of the wounds are given. So he was oppressed, he was afflicted, and yet he suffered graciously. He opened not his mouth, like a lamb that is led to the slaughter, like a sheep that before its shearers is silent, so he opened not his mouth. By oppression and judgment he was taken away. And as for his generation, who considered that he was cut off out of the land of the living, remember, he's considered cursed. So his generation looks at him as cursed. Cursed is anyone who hangs on a tree, according to Deuteronomy. And Paul picks up on that in, Galatians 4, 3:14, 10 through 14, somewhere in there, that he was cut off out of the land of the living. And Paul will say there that he was cursed for us, so that we might not be cursed. Stricken for the transgression of my people. And they made his grave with the wicked and with a rich man in his death. Remember the prophetic fulfillment here. He dies with thieves, but a rich man provides his burial. Although he had done no violence and there was no deceit in his mouth. So here we have this perfect life, this perfect righteousness, and this innocent, blameless victim who becomes the substitutionary atonement. Yet, this was all part of God's plan, and this is maybe hard to fathom. It was the will of the Lord to crush him. More literally, it was God's good pleasure to do this. He has put him to grief. When his soul makes an offering for guilt, and this word soul, by the way, can just mean life, and typically does. And so there's this idea of this just when he gives his life as an offering for guilt. He shall see his offspring, he shall prolong his days, the will of the Lord shall prosper in his hand. So this is all now his exalted status as king over all things. The last couple verses here. Out of the anguish of his soul he shall see and be satisfied, and by his knowledge shall the righteous one, my servant, make many to be accounted righteous. So look, shall the righteous one, my servant. John says this in 1 John 2. He says, if anyone sins, we have an advocate with the Father, the righteous one. So connection there. By his knowledge he makes many to be accounted righteous, and he shall bear their iniquities. So he bears their iniquities and makes them righteous. Therefore I will divide him a portion with the many, and he shall divide the spoil with the strong, because he has poured out his soul to death. Again, this word could just be life. The Hebrew here is nephesh. He has poured out his soul or his life to death, and was numbered with transgressors, yet he bore the sin of many and makes intercession for the transgressors. So this is what Christ has done. He is the perfect sacrifice, the perfect atonement, and this is all what Isaiah says hundreds of years before we see Jesus coming on the scene. This is the servant of the Lord who will do what we could never do for ourselves. Hey, if you've gotten behind in the readings, no worries. They're going to be posted. Just the main thing is to stay in the readings. So I hope to see you in the next few videos as we continue to make our way through this 30-day plan. And we're getting close at this point to finishing up the Old Testament section. We have 2 more days in the Old Testament. And all the readings, by the way, from here on out, just sort of jump around a little, do different sections, just to get you an idea of the story. But we're about to transition to the New Testament. So look forward to that, and look forward to seeing you in the next video.